while we're seeing all these warnings come from AI leaders and others who are kind of employment experts, there's plenty of weight to those arguments. We're seeing it in our own industry. But I guess the bigger question here is how seriously should we be taking the argument that all this is happening right now, like really urgently? Like, I think on a long enough timeline, we agree there's going to be major changes to how jobs work in the age of AI. But is this really worth worrying about as urgently as some of these leaders would have us believe? That's kind of the next question that follows from this. And we wanted to look at a few different proof points that we're seeing at the moment in order to maybe stress test or kick the tires on the assumptions behind some of these job loss warnings because, it gets headlines when Amadeus says half the entry level jobs are going away. But why do we believe that? So, Paul, as we get into the second topic, I wanted to ask you to give us maybe a sense of what we're seeing here that's supporting this idea.
Yeah, so there was a couple of articles that sort of surfaced right around this time that caught our attention. So one was from the Chief Economic Opportunity Officer at LinkedIn, Anish Raman. And I'll call it a couple excerpts from this, and we'll put the link into the article. But it was a New York Times op-ed piece on, says, I'm a LinkedIn executive. I see the bottom rung of the career ladder breaking. So in this one, it says, breaking first is the bottom rung of the clear career ladder. In tech, advanced coding tools are creeping into the tasks of writing simple code and debugging the way junior developers gain experience. In law firms, junior paralegals and first-year associates who once cut their teeth on document review are handing weeks of work over to AI tools to complete in a matter of hours. And across retailers, AI chatbots and automated customer service tools are taking on duties once assigned to young associates. Continued, these changes coincide with a shift appearing in the latest employment numbers. The unemployment rate for college grads has risen 30% since September 2022, compared with an 18% for all workers. And while LinkedIn's Workforce Confidence Index, a measure of job and career confidence across nearly 500,000 professionals, is hitting new lows and general uncertainty, members of Generation Z are more pessimistic about their futures than any other age group. Meanwhile, in the recent survey, over 3,000 executives on LinkedIn at the VP level or higher, 63% agreed that AI will eventually take on some of the mundane tasks currently allocated to entry-level employees. Continued, their research suggests that professionals with more advanced degrees are more likely to see their jobs disrupted than those without. While the technology sector is feeling the first wave of change, reflecting AI's mass adoption in this field, the erosion of traditional entry-level tasks is expected to play out in fields like finance, travel, food, and professional services. So that was the first one, Mike, because who
Yeah.
has better data than LinkedIn when it
Right.
comes to this stuff? And then Kevin Roos had a great article, and I'll go through a couple excerpts of this one. So he wrote, this month, millions of young people will graduate from college and look for work in industries that have little use for their skills, view them as expensive and expendable, and are rapidly phasing out their jobs in favor of artificial intelligence. That is the troubling conclusion of my conversations over the past several months with economists, corporate executives, and young job seekers, many of whom pointed to an emerging crisis for entry-level workers that appears to be fueled, at least in part, by rapid advances in AI capabilities. I'll go through a couple more excerpts here, but I would highly recommend reading this whole
Mm.
article. It's very good. He says you can see hints of this in the economic data. Unemployment for recent college graduates has jumped to an unusually high 5.8% in recent months. And the Federal Reserve Bank of New York recently warned that employment situation for these workers had deteriorated noticeably. He quotes Oxford Economics report that says there are signs that entry-level positions are being displaced by AI at higher rates. He goes on to say, but I'm convinced that what's showing up in the economic data is only the tip of the iceberg. In interview after interview, I'm hearing that firms are making rapid progress toward automating entry-level work,
Mm.
and that AI companies are racing to build virtual workers that replace junior employees. One tech executive told him his company had stopped hiring anything below an L5 software engineer, so just a grading level, mid-level. Goes on to say, this is a quote from Molly Kinder at Brookings Institution. This is something I'm hearing about left and right. Molly studies the impact of AI on workers. Employers are saying these tools are so good that I no longer need marketing analysts, financial analysts, and research
Mm.
assistants. Now, Kevin did say if there's a silver lining for recent grads, it's that it's at least for some of them, the threat of AI replacement seems to be lighting a useful kind of fire. Some young workers that he spoke to are using their experience with AI to vault themselves ahead of their senior colleagues and others that are steering more or clear of traditional ladder climbing. So that actually goes back to Mike. On a recent podcast, we talked about how these like young workers are going to show up and be like, why are you doing it this way? Like,
Right,
why,
right.
why are you like spending 2 weeks on that thing? And then I'll just share a quick anecdote. Like I put this on LinkedIn on Sunday morning. I just like woke up and like we had meetings on Friday at the company and we were talking about like our ideal customer profiles and customer journeys and, developing customer journey maps and personas and all these things. And it was like overwhelming amount of work that probably needed to happen. It's like, oh, who's got time to like do this? And so I literally just like pulled out my, I think I was using Co-CEO and my custom GPT I built. And I'm just like cup of coffee. And I'm like, can you help me do this? And it just, because it already knows in its system instructions, our revenue model, it knows our
Mm.
audiences, like it knows all those things. It's trained on it. It just started spitting out these ICPs. And I was like, "Oh god, these are really good." And so I just kept like so I gave it the list of the 8 that I thought of, and then it would just build these things out, and then it built out customer journeys. And again, it was just this representation of once you understand what these things are capable of, you just look at work differently. And I think I said in the LinkedIn post, I owned a marketing agency for 16 years. People
Mm.
paid us to do these exact things. And if a company had come to me and I was still running an agency 6 months ago, a year ago, I that would have been $25,000 minimum. I probably would have priced it on a per ICP basis. I would have
Yep.
probably said 2,500 to 3,000 per ICP times 8. Like that's how we would do pricing. And so it was easily that. And it was probably easily 50 plus hours of work. And if we were quoting it, it probably would have been like, 2, 3, 4 weeks of work because some senior strategist was gonna have to do the work. Some other person above them was gonna probably have to review and approve it. So the whole thing just changed. And in under an hour, I built 8 ICPs that are now going to be like the foundation of our team's conversation to take them and edit them and build on them. So I don't know, Mike. I think this goes like, yes, there's this disruption that's going to happen. I think at the entry level for sure. Um, I think, this goes to how we talk about building companies. So
Mm.
anybody listening to the show have heard me say like AI forward is sort of like how we define these companies. Um, but Jeremiah Oyang was actually shared a post on LinkedIn last week where he had heard the AI forward thing at an event in Silicon Valley. And so Jeremiah had tagged, I think you and I may be in that and tagged the podcast.
Yeah.
And so I was like adding some context for him to where like the origin of that came from. And so I thought I would add this too, is because I think this is an interesting part of the conversation. If you have an AI native company, which is what I consider like a startup, like we're just going to build a smarter version of a company from the ground up. It's going to
Right.
require fewer people. There's never been a better time to do that. It's like what we're doing at SmarterX. It's, we can just be really smart with like the people we bring in fusion of AI. We don't have to lay anybody off. We actually like can bring them in. We can pay them more than normal. We can do all these things, give them more vacation days because we're able to do that from the ground up. We're able to just build the company. And my hope is we enter this sort of golden age of entrepreneurship and that offsets some of the job losses. So, if we've doubled our team, the size of our team in the last like 30, 45 days, and we're still adding more people. So we're going to be a growth engine for the economy in a small way. Like we're going to do our part to like build a company and make a difference, but we're going to do it with a fraction of the total employees we would have needed, years ago. But then what we're seeing happening where these jobs start getting impacted is the AI emergent organizations. So
Mm.
these what I view as like the traditional organizations that are trying to infuse AI. Um, Now they're going to require fewer people to grow. So if you've got an existing company, say it's 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, whatever, and you start infusing AI to build a smarter company, if the demand for their products and services remains flat or modest, they're going to cut the workforce. Like if you're not growing, even with AI, you don't need as many people. Like we know that equation.
Right.
If you grow, then you can grow without having to hire as many people as you would have. So we had a quote from Financial Times, Janet Trunkale, who's the global chief executive of EY. She recently said at a Milken Institute annual conference that her firm would not cut jobs in response to AI, but could do more with less. She said, quote, I like to think we can double in size with the workforce we have today. So there you go. I mean, like, they're just telling you, like, we're not gonna hire as many people.
Yeah.
So, and then my other thought here was before I read the Kevin Roos article, I actually wanted to see, like, is this happening? Like, can we identify some indicators that we are actually starting to already enter this job loss period? And so I gave a prompt, and we'll drop this in the show notes, but the prompt was, Dario Amodei, CEO of Anthropic, recently stated that AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and spike unemployment to 10 to 20% in the next 1 to 5 years. Can you create a research brief based on any 2025 data points that could be leading indicators we are already entering the phase of job displacement and disruption? For example, difficulty of recent graduates struggling to land jobs. Only use 2025 data. So that was the prompt I gave. I think I used OpenAI's deep research for that one. I'm not going to go into all the details, but here's what the conclusion said. While definitive pronouncements about the full realization of Amadei's predictions are premature, the 2025 evidence strongly suggests the initial phase of this predicted disruption is underway. This underscores the urgency for all stakeholders, including educational institutions, policymakers, businesses, and individuals preparing the intent of the workforce to acknowledge these early signals, which Mike goes back to your question about, like, what do we do?
Yep.
Proactive strategies for workforce adaptation, comprehensive reskilling and upskilling initiatives focused on AI literacy and human AI collaboration, and a fundamental rethinking of career paths for new entrants into an AI-powered economy are becoming increasingly critical. The 2025 data does not offer a complete map of the future, but it does provide clear evidence-based call for proactive engagement with the transformative potential of AI on the world of work. So now, Mike, this is like literally game time decision by Mike and I. So I've been working on this thing. Like, I'm really frustrated, honestly, with the lack of advancement being made to prepare for this. So to prepare
Mm.
for the future of work, the future of education. I am grateful for all the people, specifically in higher education, who reach out to me every week asking what else can be done. There are a lot of people who want to make a difference and want to think this thing through. So, like I don't know, about a year ago, I started working on this idea to build these like AI impact summits where we would try and actually project out the impact. We would bring in economists and philosophers and business leaders and educational leaders and government leaders and kind of bring people together to start having like think tanks around this stuff. And so I've been sitting on this idea for a while. And then I was kind of ready to just sort of punt it into 2026 because there's a lot going on. And then honestly, like the last 2 weeks of this podcast has like kind of pushed me to a point where it's like, okay, we have to do something. We can't just keep talking about this stuff on this podcast with no hope of like, well, okay, we want to help. And I feel that from our audience, like people are like, okay, we get it. Like
Mm.
job, we get messed up. Like, what do we do? So what we're going to do is this idea I have for these sort of the Smarter X AI Impact Summit on the future of work and education. We're going to put up an interest list. So I'm not going to make any promises that this event is coming, this summer, this fall. I've got a million things we're working on, but I think this is incredibly important as part of our AI literacy project, as part of like our bigger mission to try and have AI have a positive impact on the economy and society. So we're going to put up an interest list, and what I would ask here is it just provides a little bit of information about the event series. Like what we're thinking about is doing this series that would be geographically diverse. It would be an ongoing series of one-day events where we bring people together to sort of explore, discuss, and debate these pressing AI topics with a big focus on jobs and a big focus on education. And so there's going to be a simple form. You can just express interest of, kind of organization, job title, geographically where you are, and then just you're interested in attending it, sponsoring it, hosting, co-hosting, speaking, receiving updates. It's a super simple form that I literally threw together on Google this morning. Um, and this information will help me kind of figure out how to prioritize this. And if the interest is high, we will accelerate that planning. I want to do this. I've wanted to do this for a while, and I think it's really important. I haven't honestly like formalized the model exactly in my head. I have a vision of what this needs to be, but we're just at the formative stage right now. So if it's something that's of interest to you, check out the show notes. We will drop a link to that form. And then, like I said, just simple. we're not going to market you. This is not like a marketing database thing. This is, if you're interested in this, that's all we're going to use this list for, is to communicate with you specifically about this. If you choose to opt into something else, that's on you. But this is purely just to gather some interest, engage, you know, if, when, where, those are all the things that I'm kind of thinking about. But I just feel like we have to do more, Mike, honestly.
That's awesome. I couldn't agree more, especially, I'm glad we're talking about it more, but yeah, it couldn't be more important to accelerate actually finding solutions because you and I have talked about it. I just don't anytime someone's like, well, okay, think about UBI or this other thing, or, it's possible, interesting stuff, but it just seems like way, way, way far in the future to me, or illogical or implausible, maybe. So real
Yeah.
solutions are needed.
Yeah. And like the qualitative stuff I was referring to earlier, like that's, so I'm with my high school buddies last night and we're just kind of catching up and I'm explaining what's going on. They're just like, a couple of them were like, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know it was this
Right.
far along and what's happening. Like, what are people going to do? How does it get solved if people don't work anymore? I was like, UBI, like that's the lab's answer to everything. They don't tell you what that is or how it works. And yeah, it's just, I don't feel like anybody is presenting true ideas. And I'm not saying we're going to be the one to figure it out, but if we have to be part of accelerating the conversation around it,
Right.
then that's what we need to do. And I feel like right now that's the best role we can play in this, is just try and get people together and drive this conversation forward, and not like behind these closed doors. Like maybe these conversations are happening in government. We're just not being told about it, but
Yeah.
we need to get this, like, kind of shine a light on this.